Metaphors for therapy. What is therapy? What's a metaphor? What's another metaphor? These are a series of metaphors that I use to describe therapy when I'm in early work with my clients. So the last one was therapy is a... What is therapy? The client asks. It's a good question to ask because it's quite an abstract, subjective, obscure, perverse thing, therapy, really, if you're doing it right, I think. And my last TikTok video, I spoke about the idea, the symbology, the metaphor that therapy is like a boat, a little tinny, a little outboard, a rowboat that my client and I construct and get into, and we row from one side of a river in flood to the other side of the river in flood. And the river in flood is called depression or anxiety or addiction or immobilization or some kind of mental health challenge. And we traverse that river, we get to the other side, and then I shake hands with the client and say farewell. And their job is to leave me in that space and get on with their lives and go on until perhaps they get to the next raging fjord, and they might need some therapy again, which is perfectly fine and appropriate. Therapy is not a one-time thing necessarily, because life is complicated and new challenges come along. However, I do think if we're doing it right, once a client and a therapist, a motivated client and a good therapist have had about 6 episodes of care, hopefully they internalize enough skills in good therapy to be able to maybe get to the 7th challenge, life challenge or mental health challenge, and kind of put together the process themselves. The first metaphor for therapy that I shared was the therapy of the rowboat. The next metaphor that I use in early therapy with a lot of my clients, if it's appropriate, is the metaphor of the wall. So what I say to my clients is, okay, so what is therapy? What is it that we're doing here, this weird process where you and I are sitting in a room and we're ventilating intimate material? It's like you're bopping along on your life journey and you come to a wall. And the wall is very, very tall. It's a big ornery wall, and it's untraversable. You try and get over it, it's too high. You try and dig under it, the foundations are too low. You try and run up, right, left, it goes on forever. This is a non-traversable wall, and the wall is called depression. It's a big name, there's a big sign on it called depression, or maybe anxiety, or maybe addiction, or maybe rage, or maybe existential grief, loss and trauma. Who knows? It could be any number of titles. So I say to the client, you've got yourself a situation where you find yourself immobilized against this wall. And what therapy is, good therapy, is a good therapist, hopefully myself or somebody else, comes along, and together, the client and I, what we do is we build a ladder. In collaboration, we build a ladder, and the client's able to traverse, to transcend, to climb up that wall, get over it and get onto the other side and get on with their life. And they say, this is terrific. Fabulous. And on they go. So therapy is like a ladder across a wall, over a wall. And so the client gets on and bops along with their life until they get to the next wall. And then they come to therapy again. And once again, we collaboratively build a ladder and we traverse the wall. And it happens again and it happens again. But once it's happened about 6 times, hopefully, the client has learned enough baseline skills and is able to self-build, self-conceptualize, self-internalize therapeutic goals and ambitions and do it themselves. Because as I often say, and I do very much believe, my job as a therapist is ultimately to make myself redundant so that I help the client to internalize the inner therapist for themselves. And they can, by the time they get to the 7th mental health challenge, they know enough to be able to build this stuff for themselves, build it themselves, and they are able to transcend the wall, the problem, all by themselves. So therapy as a ladder, a co-collaborative ladder over a wall.